accounting standards and robust IFRS 17 implementation. So if I can just touch a bit on the points that you see on this slide. I see there's somebody that says they can't hear. I'm just checking if everyone can hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Is it? Okay. Okay. So, all right. Thank you for that. Thank you for confirming. All right. So I'm going to then proceed just to touch on what we've done from an audit quality perspective. So we work in this regard through our membership in the monitoring group, as well as with the Global Public Policy Committee. And we then encourage improvement in audit quality in this regard. The GPPC brings together the six largest global accounting networks to focus on public policy issues facing the accounting profession. And then whenever applicable, the IAIS will then submit comment letters on different topics to the IAAWG as well as the IASBA in that regard. In the current year, though, we didn't submit any comment letters that relate specifically to audit or ethics related matters. However, from an accounting standard point of view, we did submit 2 comment letters to the IASB, and these 2 were submitted. The first one was the comment letter on financial instruments with characteristics of equity, and this was submitted in March this year. And then on the climate-related matters, we also submitted a comment letter on the exposure draft on climate-related and other uncertainties in the financial statements, and that was submitted in November. From an IFRS 17 perspective, we've had a few activities that we've been working on since last year. So where we started, as I mentioned, we have been working closely with the GPPC. So we have an annual roundtable that is hosted by the Financial Stability Board, an audit roundtable. The last one that was held was in May last year. So we had that in Madrid last year. Sorry, it was in June last year. And the focus, as the name of it suggests, is on external audit. So at the meeting, the GPPC was invited, and discussions included how to achieve the execution of high quality audits following the implementation of IFRS 17 for the first time in 2023. So we had this discussion then with the audit firms through the GPPC that were represented there. The next roundtable will be held in May 2025. So we didn't have one this year, and we will then be convening again to discuss audit-related matters in that regard. Then again, through our interactions with the GPPC, we have continued our discussions with the GPPC, especially following the implementation of IFRS 17, just to understand from an industry perspective what the challenges were in this regard, as well as the readiness of insurers when it comes to the implementation of IFRS 17. So at our May meeting that we had as the AAWG, we did invite members of the GPPC to provide updates on industry challenges that were experienced as part of this, and just some updates in terms of how audits were proceeding in this regard. And the updates that were provided just in terms of challenges that were experienced included the degree of change, moving from IFRS 4 to IFRS 17, the different starting points from the different entities, as well as the maturity of system solutions and complexity of accounting requirements. We found that a lot of the solutions that insurers were using were quite manual, and the auditors or the members of the GPPC did then say that there was an expectation at that point for more overlays with the first time implementation of IFRS 17, and because of the lack of maturity at the time of system solutions that were supporting IFRS 17. What was also noted is a delay in reporting and some extensions required by some institutions also as a result in that regard. Then when it comes to, again, implementation, at our meeting in September last year, we held a round table on IFRS 17. We had this meeting in Cape Town in South Africa. And at this meeting, we invited various representatives that would represent the auditing profession, as well as insurers from both the life and non-life sectors from Africa and other emerging markets and developing economies, that also took us through their implementation of IFRS 17 and how they had managed the whole process, especially where insurers also have a presence across multiple jurisdictions. Then finally, we continue to survey our members, so the different member countries that are represented at the AAWG, just to understand when it comes to implementation, how the jurisdictions in the various countries are faring in terms of IFRS 17 implementation. So we also then use this to share best practices amongst members and also look for opportunities to work with other IIS committees, and specifically where we can provide training and capacity building activities. So that's the update from the AAWG in terms of our activities that we have been working on. However, I would also, we've got colleagues that are joining us as well from the IIS Climate Risk Steering Group, which is another topical area from a climate and sustainability point of view. And on this, I would like to call on my colleagues from the Climate Risk Steering Group. So Joe from the group will be taking us through the update. Thanks, Joe, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me okay. My name is Joe Perry. I support this work in the IS Secretariat. I'm also here with my colleague Miroslav Petkov, who supports the overall climate work. And actually, we have a couple of colleagues who are on the AAWG who have also been on the drafting team for this work. So there's a very nice kind of symbiotic relationship between the AAWG and the CRSG on this work. So I'll give you a quick run through of the consultation that we put out earlier in the summer. It closed on the 28th of October. So I'll just give you a broad outline of the consultation. So importantly, the application paper was designed to consider holistically whether adequate information is being shared with policyholders, market participants and supervisors on climate-related risks. The application provided supervisors with advice on the considerations related to the development of supervisory reporting, which is ICP 9, and public disclosure, which is ICP 20. And it's important to kind of recognize that we're not creating new standards here. This was purely helping supervisors consider how approaches to these matters need to be tailored to their jurisdictions. And also kind of key to highlight that obviously the IIS has members from across more than 200 jurisdictions. They're all at different stages in terms of the climate disclosure journey. Some have, for instance, adopted ISSB, others have adopted their own disclosure requirements. So we were trying to put this application paper out in a landscape which is very different across our jurisdictions. So it was supporting our members to understand how they could meet the requirements under ICP 9 and 20 in light of the kind of evolving discussions on climate disclosure. So on these slides, and I'll also drop it in the chat later, we have a public background session which we held at the start of the consultation. So that gives you a lot more detail on kind of the content of the application paper. We received a good response to the consultation. So we had 26 responses that we received, and we're currently reviewing those comments and we'll finalize this part of the climate application paper at the same time as the broader application paper that will be published next year. I'd also like to flag that we had really good input throughout the process. So in developing the application paper, we engaged with a number of stakeholders in roundtables and bilaterally as well to seek input on this work. In terms of the consultation responses, so the 26 responses that we received, broadly, the views were different between insurers and other stakeholders, and there were differences between responses from the US and the EU, predominantly from the EU because the regulatory landscape is very different, because disclosure legislation has been passed in the EU and is being implemented now. So there were those differences that emerged. I won't go into all of the details on the issues that were raised, but one I think it is worth flagging is there were a few responses that flagged concerns about the IAS adding duplication here by putting the application paper out. To be clear, this is definitely not what we want to do. We're not developing new requirements. We're just flagging how ICP 20 and 9 can be addressed in light of climate risk. And to my earlier point, this is partly because our jurisdictions are at very different stages in terms of their developments. So we have to recognize all of the different kind of permutations of the disclosure regime in those jurisdictions. Lastly, I would say we've got a very good relationship with the ISSB, and we're going to continue to work with them to look at the work that they're doing on climate disclosure and kind of be alert to the need to avoid any overlap or duplication. So Chair, that's my kind of quick summary of where we are, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
You're on mute, Zine.
Oh.
Okay, we hear you now. We hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm now going to hand over to our stakeholders just to update us then on activities and any topics of interest from their front. I do believe Doug is going to be leading the discussion, so if I can hand over to Doug to take us through the update. Thank you. Just checking if
Zine, I
Doug
don't see Doug on the call,
is he not on the call.
but maybe we go to Mr. Becker from GDV to start off the discussion, and then others can join.
Okay, perfect. Let's do that. Thanks, Lydia.
Oh, we need to unmute you. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me try this.
Great. Okay. So I'm not sure if everybody can see me. I think my camera is.
Sorry, here's Marietta from the VVO Austria. I already wrote it in the chat. It is not possible to turn on our camera.
Oh dear. Okay. We can hear you though, so apologies for that. So maybe you can proceed because we can hear you perfectly though. Apologies about the camera.
I prepared I prepared a short presentation. Is it possible to share this? Or shall I proceed without?
Yeah, we can stop sharing from our side, and then you can please check if you're able to share.
I think, unfortunately, I'm not.
Sorry, Lydia, here's Marietta VVO again. It is not possible that we can share it from our side. So far, I see on my laptop.
Can I maybe help you? Who wants to share something on the screen, please?
It is Henrike from the GDV and Marietta from the VVO. We submitted our presentation to Doug, and Doug should have forwarded to you.
Yeah, he did not forward it to us, but Aurelian can help.
Are you able to give them access, Aurelian?
Okay, Marietta, can you maybe try to share something on the screen?
No, it's not possible.
I've
have
changed
no
your
options.
role, so can you just check if something changed?
For me, not. Maybe for Henrike.
Can you try again, Marietta? Can you maybe see a button on the bottom
Now
of the
it's
screen?
possible. Now it's possible,
Yeah.
but I think then it's also possible for Henrike for the GDV. So I assume Henrike wanted to start with IFRS topics.
It's Henrike Becker,
Yeah.
GDV, right? Okay, wait a moment. Changing the role and where is he? Yeah. Okay.
Hello, can you hear
should
me?
be able to share.
Okay, great. So, so I will try to share. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can maybe ask you to put it in presentation mode.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Henrike, pardon me, here's Marietta. When you go to Anzeigeneinstellungen, Bildschirm duplizieren, then we will have a greater picture.
Okay.
Duplizieren. Duplizieren. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Great. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm glad the technical issues are out of the way now. And yeah, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to briefly present the GDV perspective and comments on the ISB project on climate-related and other uncertainties in the financial statements. We also participated in the consultations at AAWG and at the IASB, and our comment letters can be viewed online on the related websites. Maybe just a short project background and status. In March 2023, this year, the IASB launched a project to enhance the reporting on climate-related and other uncertainties in the financial statements. This project was driven by concerns of inconsistencies in climate risks and disclosures compared to broader financial reports by different stakeholders. And then in July 2024, this year, the IASB released an exposure draft with 8 illustrative examples to guide the application of IFRS standards for reporting climate-related and other uncertainties in the financial statements. AAWG, the European standards setter, also issued a draft comment letter for consultation on this IASB's exposure draft, and highlighted in that the usefulness of the proposed examples and also recommending further development of additional examples and standard setting where needed. They also proposed including an insurance-based example, which was, this suggestion was taken out in the final comment letter, which was released on November 28th. And there they reiterated the support for the examples and urged the IASB to finalize them quickly, while also calling for further steps to enhance connectivity and clarity in reporting boundaries. And the GDV in general also supports the illustrative examples proposed by the IASB, and we support also the principle-based nature of the IFRS reporting standards. We appreciate the 8 proposed examples, considering them valuable for addressing challenges in the reporting and climate-related and long-term uncertainties, also improving connectivity between financial statements and sustainability reports, and avoiding double reporting. Also, we support the examples as they are presented at a sufficiently high level, making them broadly applicable to a wide range of different entities, also across different industries. And yeah, that's why we definitely support them, and we see no need to amend the existing financial requirements, as long as the application of the current accounting principles continues to produce the outcomes that align with the commonly accepted objectives of the financial reporting. So yeah, this rounds up our comment on the IASB's ED. And I would hand over to Marietta for the next presentation.
Before, may I ask if the colleagues of the working group have some questions to Henrike?
Not at this point, thank you. We can proceed.
But then I need again the possibility to share, because for the moment, yeah, here it is. I hope it will function.
We can see the slides now.
Yeah, but there's another. I just want to go in presentation modus. Okay, it doesn't function now. But you can see the slides.
If you go to the bottom right of your screen, the button just next to the volume button to the left, right at the bottom right, next to the volume button. If you click
here
on
it is. Here it is. Okay, because I told Henrike how to manage it, so I hopefully can manage it also. So here we go. It's fine now for you?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Fine. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity to be with you again. We met last time in May of this year, and we've got from Jay a list of the topics the working group will be interested in, and one of the topics we were told is to give us a short overview what's the latest status quo of the Solvency II review, if you are fine. So as you know, the Solvency II review 2020 already started a draft by the Commission in September 2021. So it took a little bit more than 3 years. And now the review has been concluded on a political level. On the 5th of November, the Council of the European Union adopted the directive. And so we are now waiting for a publication. The publication in the official journal of the European Union is expected on the 8th of January. The publication date is is very important for insurance undertakings, because 20 days after publication in the official journal, the directive will get into force. And this would mean that member states have 2 years' time to implement the new regulation, the amendments of Solvency II. And from the next day, so from the 29th of January, the review amendments have to be implied by the undertakings. These amendments also mean great work for EIOPA, because due to new regulation, EIOPA will have to create 2020 new and the revision of 64 existing legal instruments. When we are talking about legal instruments, these comprise RTS, regulatory technical standards, and ITS, implementing technical standards, as well as guidelines. So far, EIOPA has already drawn up a work and consultation schedule. The first consultations of the RTS already started in autumn of this year. And due to the schedule, it should be concluded in the third quarter of next year. For every consultation, there is a time frame from 3 months for consultations for stakeholders. And after reviewing the outcome of the consultations, EIOPA has the duty to submit its proposal to the European Commission. But please take notice, even it's on the so-called level 2, the RTS and ITS, the Council and the European Parliament have a possibility for a so-called scrutiny period of 3 months, also with the possibility to have additional 3 months. This means that the Council and the European Parliament are not directly involved in drawing up the level 2 regulation, but they can withdraw it. So it is a little or a great question mark when level 2 also will be then published in the official journal of the EU. But these level 2 requirements are very important for the insurance undertakings, because in the directive there's the concept, the baseline of the regulation, but as you know, level 2 is the level of regulation where really the technical advice and the technical conditions are given. So the outcome of level 2 is very crucial for the undertakings to be also in line with the political agreement. And as you know, the review faces some great goals regarding investment, climate and digital transition, and also the goals of the Savings and Investment Union, better known in former days as Capital Markets Union. And the amendments should also take into account the international competitiveness of the European insurance undertakings. So one of the main topics of the review was the calibration of the treatment of long-term business, and especially new technical advice concerning the extrapolation of the risk-free interest rate, the volatility adjustment, the matching adjustment, the risk margin, and the long-term equity module are very important. These topics were already addressed in the draft of the European Commission, and especially also in the sense of safeguarding insurance long-term business model. Concerning the extrapolation of the risk-free interest rate, it has to be taken into account that at the time when the European Commission published the draft in September 2021, we were still facing these long low rate interest rate scenarios, and due to all the implications of COVID and so on, it was not foreseen what we had to face concerning inflation. So during this political process in the Council and the European Parliament, also these economic realities came to the result that there were some amendments to the Commission's draft. And it is very important also for the insurance industry when they are guaranteeing long-term products that insurance companies are not driven in a pro-cyclical behavior. Beside this, as you know, Ursula von der Leyen, the old and the new presidency of the European Commission, even before the elections for the new parliament, Ursula von der Leyen announced that it would be necessary, or they have the ambition to reduce the reporting burden for the industry, and this also comprises insurance, bank, and all the branches of real industry. The Commission realized that the reporting burden is really now a burden for companies, and so they had the ambitious goal to have a reduction by 25%. And yeah, also the insurance companies hope that this will also be reflected when drawing up now the new RTS and ITS and on level 2 and level 3, the guidelines, to reflect also this in the sense of proportionality and reporting burden. By the way, EIOPA is waiting for a mandate of the European Commission. It is expected at the beginning of next year that EIOPA will have the duty to have a look at the existing level 2 requirements, so that we might face some reductions in reporting, besides the fact that the amendments, due to the amendments, there will be more reporting in future, but to review also the existing reporting. So what were the main topics of the Solvency II review? Concerning the capital requirements, there is an amendment to the risk margin concerning the cost of capital. It is now reduced from formerly 6% to 5.775. For example, in UK, it is 4%, so lower. And there's also an introduction of an exceptional time-dependent factor, which will have influence in, or the outcome will be less capital requirements. The next topic, volatility adjustment, it's very important because many undertakings use the VA. So the general application ratio increased from 65% to 85%. That's also in the sense of lower capital requirements, but it is still has to be for sure that policyholders are safety concerning the liabilities the insurance undertakings have towards them. And concerning the extrapolation of the risk-free yield curve, there will be a change in the methodology. So there will be the so-called first smoothing point, but for the moment, it is still planned to set it at the 20th year for the ultimate forward rate then, but the concept will be changed. Yeah, and then we have also a change in the interest rate submodule, also reflecting low or even negative interest rate environment, as we were facing before the phase of higher inflation. And this will include a term-dependent floor. As you know, many of the European insurance companies have an internal model. For example, Allianz Group has a full internal model, but there are many insurance undertakings which have a partial internal model. And already for this time, some NCAs were requiring a more or less comparison calculation under the standard formula of Solvency II. And now it is planned to have this comparison mandatory, but only addressed to the supervisors, not in public disclosure. This was also argumented by the fact that internal models are an integral part of the Solvency II regime. So undertakings will have to do the calculation, but it will not be published. Another topic which was driven by the ESRB and by the FSB was taking more into account macroprudential supervision. This was also driven by the fact of the experiences by COVID. So there will be also an RTS concerning some methods and tools by the NCA in several, let's say, hopefully theoretical scenarios when there is some concerns about the macroeconomic perspective for insurance and for the banking industry. And these macroprudential considerations are also planned to have it reflected in the own risk and solvency assessment, the so-called ORSA. And there's another tool, some insurance undertakings will have to fulfill, the so-called liquidity risk management plans. Also concerning the liquidity risk management plans, there were several undertakings forced by their NCAs due to the COVID crisis to give more information to liquidity possibilities of the undertakings, but now it will be incorporated in the Solvency II review. There are two criteria to be forced to do those plans. One criteria is having more than 12 billion assets under management, and the other criteria is when there might be some vulnerabilities for insurance companies. So we have, let's say, a barrier of 12 billion, but there is another criteria which also the NCAs have the possibility for requiring those liquidity risk management plans. Yeah, and for sure, sustainability is also more incorporated now in the amendments. As you know, we had already an amendment in the Delegated Act and getting into force since August 2022, where sustainability had is already or had already to be reflected in the prudent person principle, in the actuarial function, in the risk management. But nevertheless, it was the ambition to have it even more incorporated, and it comes to an end that undertakings have now in future also implement the so-called sustainability risk plans. Those plans have the focus on prudential risks, addressing financial risk from sustainability factors, and these plans should also be integrated in the existing risk management practices and will be part of undertakings' regular supervisory reporting. Another topic of the main topic was proportionality. That was also due to the fact that medium and small insurance undertakings have to fulfill also all these requirements under the Solvency II regulation, and therefore it was a consensus on political level to have criteria for insurance undertakings, the so-called small and non-complex undertakings. This is the same wording as you know for the banking industry. So at the beginning, it was low risk undertakings, but then it was changed to the wording of the banking sector. The fact is that these criteria, there are many criteria to be identified as an SNCU. So it is very dependent on the various markets if more or less insurance undertakings might fall under these criteria and have the opportunity to have some levies under the Solvency II regime. And because there are so many criteria for this classification, medium and small undertakings were very interested that the proportionality levies they have so far are still valid, prerequisite that all the criteria are still fulfilled. And there is also from the political side an effort that more or less at least 20% of the market are granting proportionality measures in each member states, also to non-small and non-complex undertakings. These proportionality measures are focused in the field of reporting, for example, concerning this regular supervisory report. It's another mandatory report for the MCAs, and there should be the possibility to have it only to report every 3 years and not every year. But there are also other proportionality measures, as I informed you before, especially in the field of reporting. But there is another burden coming for the insurance industry in the field of reporting and disclosure. In future, it will be mandatory to have an external audit requirement for the balance sheet. In some member states, this was already in force, but now it should be mandatory for all the member states, and the wording of the Solvency II directive even has some freedom to have even more audited. So possibly it is also possible to have some other parts of the Solvency Financial Condition Report, the SFCR, also to have a mandatory audit. And this will also result in more costs and more resource-intensive work for the insurance companies, also in the interference with the auditors, and especially also for more costs. And you also have to take into account that if it has to be audited, you also have to have a watch on the timeline to finalize all the reporting requirements. And there was another amendment to the SFCR. The Commission was aware that the SFCR, as we have it now, is too comprehensive, too technical for policyholders or beneficiaries. So it was now concluded that there will have this SFCR will be split in two parts, one for the policyholders and one for the professionals. The insurance industry was in the hope that when we will now have two parts of the FSCR, that the professional part will be reduced to the quantitative reporting templates, but this is not the fact. Also, the part for the professionals still will have to have a narrative part of the SFCR. So these are my information concerning the Solvency II review, and Jay was also asking if we can have a short look at the ICS. I have to admit that's not my core business, the ICS, but I'm watching it with one eye. But I can give you the information out of the joint letter from Insurance Europe, the CFO Forum and the CRO Forum, which highlighted some key points. And you know better than me that this project ICS is lasting for several years, and that we are now will be in the phase of it is now in the phase of the implementation, in the monitoring period. And for the European undertakings, it was very crucial that the existing Solvency II framework will fit for the ICS. And in this letter, it is also addressed the Swiss solvency test and the UK solvency. And so to my knowledge, it will be now the conclusion that all the undertakings which fell under these solvency regulation are fine with the incoming ICS. And it was also of great importance that under the ICS, so to have it equal with Solvency II, internal models are accepted. And I said before, for us, internal models are an integral part of the prudential framework of Solvency II. So I am not really an expert in the so-called aggregation method, but this topic is addressed in the next bullet point, and also addressing when there will be a comparison between the outcome of ICS and Solvency II, to take into account that it is not required to have a detailed assessment on design and calibration of the various parameters. So in the end, for the finalization and adoption of the ICS and the subsequent publication of the standard, it should be recognized that now we are facing the end of the project, that it is not necessary to have more ICS data requests for the monitoring exercise, and we hope that the monitoring period will cease at the end of the year. And it is also very important that that for the testing there will be no further data requests from companies for the evaluation of the alignment of the Solvency II framework, or let's say for the European frameworks, taking into account also Swiss solvency test and Solvency UK with the ICS. So this is the end of my presentation, and there was a short chat message I saw. It's unfortunately the IS didn't get the presentation from DAC so far, but I can submit it directly to you if some of you are interested in this presentation. Many thanks for your attention, and now it's 4 o'clock, even 7 minutes, half past. I don't know if it is possible. Luca Motta from Insurance Europe should also, in the meanwhile, join this working group, and he intended to give you a short presentation to the sustainability reporting factors. So I will end now with my presentation. Many thanks to you all.
Thank you very much, Marietta. So as soon as we receive the presentation, we will then share it with the stakeholders on the call. And thank you for confirming that you are happy with that. And thank you very much for the very comprehensive presentation. It was very useful. So we'll hand over then. Sorry, I didn't get the name of the next presenter.
It should, Luca Motta from Insurance Europe should be in the meanwhile with us. I hope he could manage it.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, I think we might just need to unmute then because you won't have access. Okay, let's see. Already, are you able to assist? Okay, there you go. You've been given access.
It's done, yeah.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So, in the interest of time, I'll be brief, try to share my screen, and then potentially I can share the presentation later for your assessment. So you should now be able to see the presentation. So about sustainability reporting, cover 4 topics: the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, so-called Level 1, and the issues with transposition international law. For the Level 2 of this directive, so the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, they are the implementing technical standards, the development of the sector-specific standards, in addition to the existing sector-agnostic one. For the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, the review, which concerns exclusion of financial services downstream value chain, and then the proposal for an omnibus legislation to reduce the sustainability reporting burden, and then development of transition plan implementation guidance. So, as mentioned, European Union member states, for all the directive of the European Union, are required to transpose them into national law to have them applicable. However, 17 member states failed to do so by the deadline of July 2024. Therefore, the Commission has opened a so-called infringement procedure, asking those members for information about their failure. So as of 5th December, and actually also today, there are no updates in terms of follow-up from the Commission, but the Commission has 2 tracks: either be satisfied with the information provided by member states, or it can, let's say, escalate these infringement procedures towards the European Court, which potentially could ask the members to comply with the obligation. So in this case, the transposition, if again they fail to comply, financial penalties will be addressed to those failing states. So we'll track this process, but in the meanwhile, obviously, our members have requested the Commission to provide guidance for addressing the situation, especially for the groups which are transnational groups, because if this directive is not applicable, then The previous one, so the non-financial directive, remains applicable. However, the CSRD has a consolidating exemption for the reporting of the groups, so they can consolidate the reporting of their subsidiary, while the old directive, the NFRD, does not have this exemption. So obviously that's also an issue for auditors. Then in terms of the European sustainability reporting standards, we already shared information back in May. You can see the timeline for the development and the starting of the application. However, the request from the entire financial services sector is to halt the development of these sector-specific standards and first to focus on the implementation of the existing sector-agnostic standards, which for the first time are subject to report in 2025 for fiscal year 2024, and have at least 2 full reporting cycles. At the end of this period, there could be an assessment. There should be an assessment about the gaps, and if any gaps is identified, then very specific and targeting sector-specific standard could be developed at that time. So we are currently waiting for the feedback from the Commission about this call. On the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, even if it will apply only as of June 2026 with the phased-in approach, the Commission is already reviewing the exclusion of the downstream value chain of financial services sector. This according to Article 36 of the directive. However, obviously our members are still of the opinion that the exclusion of these financial undertakings downstream value chain should be maintained, and the exclusion should cover both the due diligence and the transition plan obligations under the CSDDD. Here's a working process because the Commission is expected to submit to the Parliament and the Council this a report on the assessment of the review clause by July 2026. And at this stage, from the information that we have, the Commission is collecting unclarified market practices or market feedback, but as mentioned, the directive has not been yet entered into force, or better, applied. As mentioned also by Marietta, considering the aim of the Commission to reduce the reporting burden by 25% for large companies and 35% for small and medium enterprises, the President von der Leyen announced in November a proposal for an omnibus legislation to address the overlapping reporting requirements under the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSDDD, that we already mentioned, and also the EU taxonomy. This initiative is expected for the second quarter of 2025. At this stage, there are no further information about the potential content of this legislation. However, from again, first information, the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation should not be included in this initiative, but reviewed in a separate track. So insurers are developing their policy recommendation for the content, let's say, of this omnibus legislation. And the first session of the Commissioner of the European Union about this omnibus legislation is scheduled for February 2025. Then transition plan implementation guidance developed by IFRAG. A first draft was released in November to cover these topics: target compatibility, actions and decarbonization levers, investment and funding, governance and strategy, and the progress reporting. A consolidated draft is expected to be released by end of the year for a stakeholder consultation in January, February 2025, and then the final implementation guidance on transition plan should be finalized by IFRAG in February, April 2025. So obviously insurers are following the process and then will provide their feedback once possible in early 2025. Second and last part, it's about financial reporting. 2 topics to be addressed: the IASB update, so amendments to IFRS 19, subsidiaries without public accountability in terms of disclosure, and the ESMA report on the first application of IFRS 17 in the financial statements for 2023. So about the first topic, we know that AAWG on 30 July launched public consultation on this exposure draft for IFRS 17 to reduce the cost of preparing subsidiaries' financial statement while maintaining the necessary information for users of the financial statement. Insurers, members of Insurance Europe, argued that the initial exposure draft and on the recently published standard, the scope of this proposed initiative unduly excludes insurance companies. However, a proper response was not submitted to IASB consultation, which closed on 27 November, but the remarks of insurance were informally communicated to IASB. And then finally, the report by ESMA, so the European Security and Market Authorities, on the 2023 financial statement application. We focus on IFRS 17 and 9. So these are the main takeaways in terms of impact of IFRS 17 in financial statements. The companies generally disclose quantitative impact, but more detailed and transparent disclosure are needed. For transition provisions, the disclosures vary significantly, and many companies provide limited explanations for the time being. Alternative performance measures, while new measures were disclosed in line with ESMA guidelines, the importance of reconciling those measures to financial statements and explaining their usefulness was emphasized. Concerning IFRS 9, so transition and impact, most companies applied it alongside IFRS 17 with the required transitional disclosures largely provided. In the end, ESMA in the report urges issuers to improve the transparency and detail of their disclosures and expected auditors and audit committees to consider findings of this report when preparing and auditing financial statements. So I understand it was a bit of rush, but also in the interest of time, we managed to cover all the topics. And then if further information is needed, can share the presentation and follow up in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Luca, and thank you also to Hendrika and Marietta for the presentations. And they were very comprehensive, so thank you for that. And apologies to the stakeholders on the call that we are running late, but if I can just ask for your indulgence for maybe the next 5 minutes, just to check if there are any questions or comments from anyone on the line before we close the call. Okay, Olivia, there's a question, so if I can please ask for assistance in unmuting. And once you're unmuted, you can go ahead and ask.
Sorry, should we
can you hear me, please? Yes. I would like to say, first of all, I would like to say thank you for the presentation relating to Solvency II review. And, I was particularly interested about the reporting and disclosure, and more specifically in the SFCR. Maybe, as you know, in France, we have not yet been implemented the audit of Solvency II data. And if I can formulate a request into the ACPR, we are very interested by this topic that is very important. And we would, if it's possible, I would like to request to the AAWG the opportunity to have another view of the practice in the several jurisdictions that are members, and more specifically have an information about the scope of this audit of Solvency II data. Because in France, we are sure that we will audit the Solvency II balance sheet, narrative, and some quantitative information, but it could be very useful to have a comparison with the other jurisdictions. And that's all for me. It's only my request.
Thank you very much. So we do take note of your request, and we'll take it back to the working group, and then we'll be able to formulate a response in that regard. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands. So in the absence of such, but also if there are any questions that do arise after this, you can also still email them, because I am mindful that we are out of time. Oh, sorry, I see Nicholas has a question. So Nicholas, you can come through quickly. I can ask for assistance with unmuting as well. Yes, Nicholas is still muted.
My question is in relation to IFRS 17 and the IIM, the Individual Insurance Monitoring. I hope this is in scope of this working group. You know, as part of the holistic framework, AAWGs are required to provide annually a data collection to the IAS, so that the IAS can monitor the buildup of systemic risk globally. And for years, like I would say, you know, out of thin air a bit, but 80% of those data were coming from the financial statements that were based on the accounting standards at the time, so mostly IFRS 4 when it comes to insurance data, so premiums, for instance. With the transition to IFRS 17, a lot of the items that are collected through the holistic framework are outdated and not in line with the new IFRS 17 standards, and also to some extent also with IFRS 9. So the problem is we have adapted our systems, been big investments, a lot of transition with our finance teams to get up to speed and to really factor IFRS 17 and 9 in our accounting and finance work streams and processes. But every March, April, now we have to go back and dig into various layers of our systems to find those IFRS 4 items that the IAS continue to ask us to report. This is very time consuming at times of closing, and very demanding for the teams that ask why we have to report those data that are not anymore what we are using in our financial statement, therefore creating a gap between the public information and what we are transferring to the IAS for the purpose of the monitoring. So I think there would be an interest in the accounting group to kind of advise the groups at the IAS working on the IAM to update their files and make sure that we can, going forward, use financial statement data in this monitoring as we've done for years now, when IFRS 4 was the norm. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicholas, for your comment. So I can assure you that this is something that is on the IAIS agenda, and we are also aware as the AAWG, and this is something that other insurers have also brought to our attention. So it is something that we are working through, and once we do have a definite outcome on the matter, we will then be able to revert to industry from an IAS perspective on it. But thank you for raising it. It's definitely something that is under discussion. Thank you. So we will provide we'll provide responses to that. I do also see your message on the chat. So members, thank you very much, and thank you for indulging us for an additional 12 minutes on this. But this has been very insightful and very useful, and thank you to the presenters. And as mentioned, if there are any other questions that do arise out of this, you are welcome to then direct those via email to Lydia, and we will then be able to respond appropriately. So thank you very much for joining us on the call this morning, this afternoon, and I hope you Have a lovely day further, and we will see each other at our next call. Thank you very much.
We thank you. You too have a good afternoon, a good further working group. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.